Members present are myself, I'm the chair, Rebecca Lisi, city councilor at large. I also have vice chair Juan Anderson Burgos representing Ward 6, Ward 2 city councilor Terry Murphy, Ward 5 city councilor Linda Vacan, and Ward 4 city councilor Libby Hernandez. We have one item on the agenda that's not this evening, and it is the continuation of a public hearing for a special permit for marijuana facility at 90 Sargent Street. Is there a motion to take this up for discussion?
Motion to take up item 1 and reopen the public hearing.
Second.
Or continue it, I should say.
Motion made and seconded to take up item number 1 and continue the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. So this is a special permit for an MME and MMRE at 90 Sargent Street. This is a new project from a group that's been in the city for another project previously. Am I correct that this is the MME and MMRE?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, and so where we left off was we were awaiting review of, so this process, the applicant submits an application and project proposal to our planning department. The planning staff reviews it and then sends it back to the ordinance committee and the applicant to sort of clarify areas that may be gray or aren't clear at this point in time. And Buudda Brothers was working with Curtis Wyman. They had submitted sort of responses to the initial review of their project, and we were, as the ordinance committee, waiting for the planning board to give us some advisement as to how well those responses met the ordinance and the way that we shape the law. And what I understand to this date is that we actually had Curtis Wyman in the planning department working on your submission, your application, and Curtis Wyman has actually left the city. So we still don't have a thorough review of the responses that you had submitted. I can say some of the things that, you know, based on the way that the previous meeting went and what we have before us here, I know that I did get a communication from the engineer, and the engineer felt that parking was the biggest issue per the previous letter that he sent, and he just asked that if we do move forward on closing the hearing, that we should think about whether we'd like to, as the ordinance committee and the council, to request that an updated parking plan be submitted for review and approval by the engineering and planning departments prior to moving forward with future phases of the project. I think that's a reasonable condition.
Could I comment on that, Madam Chair?
I'm sorry?
Could I comment on that?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, just, you know, having gone to the site and walking through in terms of parking and the number of employees that they're planning on having, one of the things that we talked about, and I'll certainly let them say if I'm wrong, but we talked about putting parking on Front Street adjacent to their property on the west side of Front Street, right by their building. And then after the next property, which is the property that Mr. Preston had concerns about, there is ample space to put additional spaces on the east side of the property without being in jeopardy of any of the other abutters. And I know the Buudda Brothers, in talking about it, thought that was part of what they would like to do. And that would provide them somewhere, and obviously I'm not the city engineer, but I would venture they're going to get between 8 and 12 parking spaces there. And if I'm not mistaken, their shifts are going to be between 8 and 10 people. So it should be very minimal in terms of parking on Sargent Street itself, if at all. And just the deliveries would be the issue on Sargent Street.
Sure. And then is that actually written into the revisions that were submitted? Is what Councilor Murphy just recounted written into the revisions that were submitted?
Sorry, would you be able to repeat the question?
Sure. So it seems that Councilor Murphy did a site visit with you and, started understanding the lay of the land, and you guys, started talking about how to configure parking to meet the needs of the business.
Mhm.
And so because what we're doing here today is working to approve the project, I think we need to understand whether this proposal that Councilor Murphy just noted is actually built into the narrative and project proposal that was submitted.
That's correct. Also,
Is there no revision?
correct, alongside an updated traffic plan that we were able to get submitted over to the city just this past week.
Right, we did see the updated traffic plan. Are there questions from other committee members? No. All right, so I think given that it is a phase project, and I remember looking at the phase narrative that was submitted, and it seemed definitely a lot better than the initial go, where the phase plan wasn't documented in any way. It still seemed a bit thin on details, so I think that along the same lines, if we're going to move forward to close the hearing tonight, I would like to condition future phases to a review of the planning and engineering departments, just so that there's a dialogue about what's happening. It wouldn't impact the permit, but that in order to, I guess, stay compliant with the permit that we passed tonight, you would be subject to this sort of review for future phases. And I think that's a reasonable request, because we don't get this project before us at any other point in time. And you have, I believe it's up to four phases total. Yeah.
Yeah, 3 phases.
3 phases total. So, things may change. The plans may change. The market may change. I just think that it is reasonable to submit, the phased plans to a review process by the planning and engineering departments. Does anyone from the committee have any thoughts on that? Or
I have my hand up in the corner there.
Sorry, I didn't turn on that
Okay.
other box. There we go. Go ahead. Thanks, Linda.
Okay. So my suggestion would be that we use our standard 6 conditions, and that we add the 7th, as we did with the last proposal, that includes that all recommendations from the planning and the city engineer be complied with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that that would require them coming back to Ordinance Committee, really. I mean, I think the legal compliance that we would have would be to put any detail in the conditions that we want. I guess we could ask them to come back, but once we pass this, and if the council agrees and passes it, really the binding language will be the blessing of the Office of Planning and Economic Development and the city engineer.
Mm-hmm. Right. Are you all set? Because I'd like to respond to that. Right. So if we decide to close the public hearing tonight and pass a special permit, we will never see this project come before the Ordinance Committee again. But I think what we can do is condition it so that to the point that you just made, all of the requirements of the engineering and planning reviews are met, and B, that the future phases be submitted to a similar review by the technical staff of the city, not the Ordinance Committee. It won't come back before the Ordinance Committee.
Yeah.
But I think that, I'll say more about this later with the order that I filed, but I think we should, think a little bit more about what the city council's role here is, because our planning staff is sort of going through this process of, creating detailed reports to us. This is the only opportunity that we get to sort of question and review the projects that are being submitted. But if we just are creating conditions, that, all the requirements outlined by our technical departments are met, then I'm not sure if we have much of a role in the big picture of things. But anyhow, I'll take what Councilor Bacon said as a motion. Would anyone like to second the motion for the 7th, and then mine would be the 8th amendment?
I'll second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to add the 2 additional amendments to the first 6. I'll read them into the record, although we should be familiar with them at this point.
Just as a point of order, should we just make sure there's nobody from the public?
Yeah.
Sure. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this issue in favor or against? Buudda Brothers, before we close the public hearing, do you want to offer any other sort of thoughts?
Yeah, I think that we were able to submit everything that was necessary. I think that we're here to, not think, but we know that we're here to work with the city. So if there's anything that, of course, needs to be addressed, or if anything that we can make the process a little bit easier, please just let us know. And yeah, moving forward, we look forward to hopefully getting this project off the ground and finally get things started.
Great, thank you. Councilor Anderson Burgos.
Yeah, also for Buudda Brothers, any recommendations that you can give us, you know, the city council, as far as in like processing or anything that you found difficult that we could actually help make the process a little bit better? Those kind of recommendations to us are nice as well, because you know we're trying to help new businesses come in, but we need to know what they're struggling with and see what we can do to make everything a lot smoother for both sides.
I think I could just touch on one thing that we just found that was a little bit difficult for us. I mean, for the most part, I think everybody was, and all departments better said, we didn't experience any type of resistance. So we thank you guys for that. We were able to communicate with everyone in an efficient manner and very effectively. However, I think that, you know, starting off, it was just a little bit difficult finding out which department to get to, and just getting pointed in the right direction. I think last week, I think that was a pretty good example. Unfortunately, we ended up sending over those documentations that needed to be updated to the wrong department. And that was just, I guess, the lack of communication from either both parties or one party. I just don't want to put any blame. I'm sure we should have done a little bit more due diligence to kind of confirm where that information needed to be submitted to. I think it's just really communication and just really getting directed to all the right departments. If that's one thing that we found trouble with, I think that's the only thing. I think Terry has been a wonderful help. So thank you, Terry, for all that you've done thus far for us and hopefully moving forward. And, you know, the process was pretty lengthy, but for the most part, it's just part of the journey. I think that it was somewhat efficient. And yeah, I think everything else I was pretty fine with.
Thank you. I do want to note, because I think there was some to the point raised last week and now this week again about where documents should be sent. I checked, and it should be that the city clerk receives all official documents and communications. Even if there are amendments, they should be sent to the clerk and then distributed to all the relevant departments. That way, there's an official record of what has been submitted. So if there was ever, an application submitted, let's say you sent it originally to the clerk's office and she distributed it to all the relevant departments, but then revisions were sent only to one department, we wouldn't have sort of, I guess, an even understanding of what was submitted. So everything should be sent to the clerk, stamped as an official document, and then distributed from there. Councilor Hernandez, I see your hand up.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi. I just want to add, I believe that it was Councilor Anderson Burgos that suggested the last time that we should probably have like for new businesses, like sort of like a punch list that we go through so they can really like a little map. And I think that that's very friendly and also keeps everything organized. So maybe we should develop on making this for as we move forward.
Okay, sounds good. I think we've mentioned that a couple of times to have that sort of like checklist with the various applications that can be picked up in the clerk's office. All right, so then on the motion that we I'm sorry, I lost track of the motions, but I think we're talking about the amendments presently. Right, the 6 amendments, here we go. Thanks, Juan.
I think we added 7 and 8.
We added 7 and 8, and here are the original 6. That the owner of the building always pay commercial property tax to the extent allowed by federal, state, and local laws for the duration of the special permit. That the business retain a minimum of 30% Holyoke residents for non-security jobs. That hiring preferences be given to security personnel that are retired Holyoke police or are a retired member of another police department that now lives in Holyoke. There shall be no marijuana consumption to be allowed on site, and there shall be no deliveries of retail or medical marijuana from the site to individual homes, residences, or people. And that finally, 6, the hours of operation be compliant with the city ordinances. It's all set. All right. So then the 7th would be that a condition be made that the applicant meet all the requirements that are outlined in communications between the engineers department and the planning department. And then finally, number 8 is that future phases be submitted to a review of the engineering and planning department. That's all 8. For discussion, Councilor Murphy?
Could I just ask if, again, having been there, I think the idea of making parking improvements on Front Street, I would almost like to see if we could make that a condition. And I would like to hear the Buudda brothers comment on that, but I think they would be okay with it, because I think that really would do 2 things. Number one, it would enhance the value of their property because it would make that little street look a lot better. Plus, it would address the concerns of the city engineer. So I just wonder if they would be, especially after they get through phase 1 and phase 2, if they're going to make sure they have that parking. I think phase 1 is they'll have somewhere between 6 and 8 employees. So that would be when parking starts to take effect. Could I ask that question to them?
Yeah, through the chair to Buudda brothers, although I think they noted that those revisions are already in their revised submission.
That's correct. So that was a topic of conversation between Terry and I and the team. So yeah, all of those updates have been reflected in the document,
Okay.
and we will be making such improvements hopefully in the phase 2.
Okay, so it's already committed. Then I'm all set, because I do think that would make a good improvement on the property and in terms of just the appearance.
Absolutely, and it's something we need. So definitely in the document.
Okay.
I'm all set.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then on the motion with the 8 amendments to, actually, we should close the public hearing.
Yes.
Motion to,
Make a
I'll
motion.
make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
motion has been made and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. And
Motion to recommend the special permit with the 8 amendments as voted by the committee.
Second.
motion has been made and seconded to pass the special permit with the 8 amendments noted. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. It looks like it's a 5-0 vote unless anyone protests. Unanimous. Okay, so you guys are all set for our 7 o'clock meeting. We'll be able to take this up for a vote. I think that we should adjourn this meeting, and if anybody needs to take a short break between now and when we begin the full council meeting, there's a little bit of time there to do that.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Again.
Motion has been made and seconded to adjourn the ordinance committee meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye, so moved.